Okay, hello and welcome to the November meeting, virtual meetup meeting of the Credit Union Tableau user group. We are the group dedicated for credit unions using Tableau and other platforms. We're excited to have everybody to be able to participate in a forum where we can talk about data analytics, business intelligence, and associated topics, collaborate, and share various things. Today, we're going to be jumping into a couple of different great presentations. I'm going to run us through some community updates and housekeeping. And then we're going to jump over to Melissa Pomeroy from St. Mary's Bank up in New Hampshire. It is a credit union, the first credit union in the US, who's going to walk us through the journey into analytics that she's overseen there. Following that, we'll have a Q&A, questions for Melissa, and then Cassandra Stoddard and Aaron Locke from Workers Credit Union in Massachusetts are going to do our Tableau and Tell segment, where they're going to talk about their process and share some of their favorite, most value-added dashboards. So without further ado, I am Charlotte Taft. I am the Director of Business Intelligence here at Callahan Associates in Washington. And I have been with a group of other folks from credit unions running our community here for credit union users. I feel like that part is clear now. I just wanted to highlight, if you have questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A box that's on the black Zoom meeting toolbar, not the chat function. We may lose questions if you put it in chat. So use the Q&A. I'm going to be reviewing that and answering ones that I can during the presentations, and then handing it over to the various presenters to give them the chance to respond. So please feel free to use that. We're excited to answer questions, and if we do run out of time, we will be sharing answers both directly with you if we have your info through the registration and on our community forums page. And then we will also be sending out both the deck and a recording of this webinar afterwards, no later than the end of this week. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, just a quick word about our community. Many of you have joined the Tableau user group community on the Tableau site. We've got the link here at the bottom of this slide. And it's somewhere I usually post invitations and information about what we're doing. But one of the best features is it gives you the ability to ask questions and use just sort of the traditional message board forum functionality to call out various things you might want to discuss. And we actually had 2 questions roll in this month. One was about whether or not anybody else was trying to analyze call center data and hook up MySQL databases to Tableau, and sort of getting some inspiration about what kinds of questions to ask, how to do it. And then another one, and this is sort of a trend I think people typically have a lot of questions about, is anyone using both Tableau and, in this case, Fiserv Prolog? And for the first question, this is just a little screenshot of how it looks. Jessica Wodelis from her credit union was asking, what kind of information can I get? And we got a response back with suggestions, things they'd done. And if people want to check in on there, you're able to go back and forth as much as you like. You can set up whether you want email notifications or if it's just something you check out on your back burner. It's really up to you. But it's a really wonderful tool that's totally free for us to use, that I think could be a wonderful way to help each other out and sort of push the CU spirit of collaboration, even if we're not always able to share our dashboards and things like that. So I just wanted to close that out with saying that if you have examples of call center reports you've built and that you're willing to share or discuss, any tips about pulling call center data into your data warehouse or your databases that you're using, and if you're interested in walking through that process with other people, we can organize a group call or chat or email chain, and I think that's a great use of this group and our non-meeting time, so to speak. So if you're interested in that topic, please feel free to email Jessica Wodelis. She's at Advantage FCU, and her email is on the slide, which will be provided to you guys after the meeting. As to the other one, we get lots of questions, at least in the last meeting, about vendors, and everybody wants to talk about that topic. And if you're wanting to connect with other people who are also using the question in this example was Fiserv Prolog, okay? whether you're looking for vendors, trying to make a decision that will fit your current things, or whether or not you're just saying, I would love to have a really good dashboard with this data. What have other people done? This is a great forum to do that. And we're going to see about the most efficient way to set up conversation. The forum on the page is one way, but you can also feel free to email the host if there's a specific vendor mentioned, or reach out to me. My email's on the screen as well. And I'm happy to hook you up with people. I think we want conversation and collaboration as much as we can. On that note, Jessica has volunteered to sort of spearhead this effort. And so starting in our next meeting, she'll be presenting some of the questions and types of activities we can get up to in the community. So thank you to Jessica, and you can sort of put a face to the name there. Okay, so without further ado, I do just want to repeat, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box and not the chat. And just a reminder, we will be sending out all the information after the fact here. So I'm ready to pass over to Melissa, who's going to walk us through her experiences and best practices that she experienced at St. Mary's. Over to you, Melissa.
Okay. Let me share my screen, and you should all be hopefully seeing my screen. And Charlotte, thank you very much for the introduction and for allowing me to come kind of share our story here. As the title says, and as Charlotte mentioned, I'm here to kind of talk about our journey into analytics. And the more I hear about others' experiences with data and analytics within the credit unions, the more I'm starting to realize that our entry point, I think what we've done since we made that entry is a little different, a little unorthodox, if you will. But we've had some great successes, and I'm really hoping you get some value out of the story that we have to tell. So just as some really quick background, I appreciate the recognition that St. Mary's Bank is in fact a credit union. We get attacked pretty regularly that, what are you doing here? You're not a credit union, but we are. And in fact, we are the nation's first credit union. We were founded in 1908. From a size perspective, we're just under $1 billion in assets right now, I believe. We've got about 235 employees. So decent size, but not enormous. And a little bit of background in terms of how did we get on this journey? How did we get started? Why did we get started? I actually received a call in 2014. I do not have a data background or a financial services background. I was a consultant for many decades. I got a call in 2014, and I was asked if I would be willing to come lead a core conversion effort. I have a background in software development and large-scale system implementation. So I said, sounds great, it's close to home. Let me jump in there and see what this project is like. And what I found, which is certainly not different from what exists in other industries, is a whole bunch of disparate source systems, a very, very aging core, not great data quality, again, very similar to other conversion programs and projects that I've seen, and no data warehouse or single source of truth. We had a very, very competent group of business leaders who were able to query the source systems, write their own scripts, get some canned reports, and be able to effectively manage their teams and deliver, which is a good thing. However, it's time. It's 2014 now. They haven't gone through an overall technology upgrade in a while. So let's kick that off with this core system conversion. So when we decided to go ahead and move forward with this conversion, what we found is when we ripped out this core, we also had to change, because of the nature of the conversion we were doing, we had to change all of the ancillary systems and data feeds and connectivities across the organization, across the platform. So what this led to is what we call, and actually mostly what I call, is our data-driven journey, or our journey into analytics. Now, at a glance, I'm going to save a little bit of time at the end to be able to talk about some of the things we're doing now. But when I talk about our data-driven journey, and when I think about that, again, it's a little bit different from your traditional, let's jump into analytics and business intelligence. I kind of break up our journey when I talk about it into 3 distinct areas, starting in 2014 and taking us to the present time. So the first step that we take, and I'll get into some more detail on this, is, hey, we've got to convert this core system. Hey, we've got to jump off of all of these legacy applications into a new one. And like many organizations who haven't gone through this large-scale type of conversion in quite some time, we've got some cleanup to do. We don't want to put bad data into a brand new system. We want to make sure we take care of that ahead of time. Our first step kind of headed us down that path. the second step, or the second piece of the puzzle here in terms of our journey, is, hey, we've got this data now, we've got all of these new systems, we've got to get at that data. Our leaders, our business leaders, they need to be able to report on that data. They need to be able to provide information to their supervisors, to their managers, to the Fed. All of this information needs to be readily available for our end users. So we had to tackle that second. And then third, once we had a good handle on that, that's when we decided it's time to dive into building reports and dashboards that give business area leads information upon which they can act. So ultimately what we're looking for there is, come on, let's make some data-driven decisions, and let's provide that information effectively and most importantly, efficiently. So if we, right now, just want to speak a little bit to kind of our first step here. And one thing I do want to point out, if I jump back up here, you can see that at the top of all of these phases is this little Tableau icon. Tableau came to us in 2014, and they've been with us ever since. And our, say our dependency on Tableau, but that sounds, doesn't really come across the way I mean it to. We're constantly learning how to leverage Tableau more and more as we proceed through these different phases. So that's going to be a common theme throughout this process. So, okay, our first step, let's do some data staging and cleansing. We're ready to do this big, massive conversion. We've got dirty data, as again, any organization or any old system does. So how are we going to get this cleaned up? The process that we had for cleaning up was manpower. And we had folks going in and looking for some common data quality issues. One of our leaders in our organization, in our IT organization, had the excellent idea to go out and look for some help with this. We hired a data consulting firm out of Maine, Architecture, who is also going to be a very consistent theme as I move through this presentation. And we said, hey guys, can you come in, give us a hand, take a look at what we have, help us clean up our data, because we don't want to put some data that needs to be cleaned up into a new system. We want to take care of that ahead of time. So they came in. The first thing they did is they took all of our legacy data, all of the data from our existing source systems, and they put that into a data warehouse. So they took our disparate systems, all of the data in whichever format it was, and put it into a data warehouse and said, okay, we're going to focus on data quality. What Architecture brought with them was a data quality rules engine. And this is a rules engine that's applicable to multiple industries for multiple different uses. So essentially what they did is they interviewed our business areas and said, what type of data quality errors do you think you have or are you trying to find? And you can see from this dashboard that they created in Tableau, we defined 143, and at the point that this snapshot was taken, 127 of those rules were implemented. And what that means is what this data quality rules engine did for us was it took those 143 business rules that may be, show me all the loans that don't have an interest rate, show me all of the accounts that do not have a members who do not have a social security number, show me missing birth dates, show me this, and we could rank them in terms of importance. 127 of them were implemented at this point, and that meant that we had dashboards in Tableau that were offered to us directly to our business units so they could go in and isolate those data quality errors. So for example, you could, for this particular dashboard, you can sort on by the specific rule, which meant the view would be respective of the individual rules for a particular source. So this is our mortgage system for a particular business line. If I were to open this up, you could say, well, I am the deposit operations manager, therefore I will select deposit ops as a business line, and this will show me the rules that I have to clean up or that have been identified. All of this information down at the bottom, and there are subsequent tabs that provide the detail behind this. So what a manager could then do is, instead of asking their people to just go into the systems or try to write some queries on one system and compare it to another source system, they would actually just direct them to these Tableau dashboards. They could print out screenshots, they could print out lists, and those folks could jump in there and clean up these data elements. So this was a huge boost for us. We got to learn how to use Tableau, even at a very rudimentary level, probably an unorthodox level, but this was extremely helpful for us to engage our user community in being part of this massive conversion effort, and also shed some insight on, whoa, there are some repeating occurrences that we see here. So for example, if you look at this dashboard, using the color coding, you can say, wow, so for all of the mortgage services, for example, errors, for all of the different types of errors that we could have, almost half of them are related to real estate tax information. Some stuff is missing on that loan application from that particular source system. So not only does our data quality error dashboard allow us to kind of jump in there and clean some stuff up so we have a successful conversion, it also shed some insights. So maybe we need to look at this process. Maybe we need to look at this workflow. Maybe it's a training issue. We were constantly starting to gather some of that information. So again, data cleansing, a very, very big part in kind of how we got started. The next step, we want to talk a little bit about data access and reporting. So we fight our way through the conversion project, and I'm guessing, since this is a pretty big group on the phone, that some of you have been through a core conversion. As a result of the core conversion, when you're in that post-conversion environment, inevitably you're going to have business users who are struggling. And we had some that were angry. We replaced all of our ancillary systems, our core legacy system, with all of these new processes, all of these new systems. And how do I access my data? I used to get a report emailed to me. I used to get a report that I just pulled from the legacy system. I used to write these queries, but now I don't have access to that anymore. How am I supposed to get at this data? So once again, enter architecture. We retained their services post-conversion. Just as they had loaded all of our legacy information into a data warehouse, they did the exact same thing with our new converted data into a data warehouse. We had all of the data from all of our different systems in this one data warehouse, and they helped us meet a very immediate need, which is, look, we've got to give these business users access to the data, and we want to give them access to the data as objectively as possible. We didn't want them to have to go to system A and system B and then make some extrapolation or apply some business logic in order to populate a report. We wanted to have our single source of truth. We wanted to allow them to get at this data. With that, architecture introduced the concept of a workbench. So what they brought to us was they said, okay, you know what? You've got a few core business areas. You do loans, you do deposits, you have members, your members perform transactions. We're going to develop these workbenches for you. And with a whole lot of work behind the scenes dividing these fields, what they were able to build was what I like to call a lens into our loan portfolio. So for example, every single day, our systems, our data warehouse is refreshed with our system, in the source system data. Every single morning, this dashboard is populated, this workbench is populated with the most current information. So as of last night, as of close of business yesterday, we can see the number of loans we had on the books, the original amount of those loans, the current balance, the average loan rate, average loan score, and we could change what type of information we want to see on this dashboard through the different slicers and filters that are available here. So for example, if I wanted to know how many consumer loans do we have on the books that were originated between a certain time frame, it takes a couple clicks and I can see that here. So this answers immediate questions. It also allows us to get as granular as we would like or as high level as we would like, depending on who that user is. What we found, this was a very big win, huge success. A lot of the leaders in the different departments, particularly in loan servicing, loan operations, and accounting, were leveraging this workbench, exporting the data into a format like Excel that they're familiar with, and then they were basically reproducing the reports that they were used to seeing before. So we still have manual work. That's not good. This is still going to take a long time because they've got to export this data. That's not great, but the data that they're getting is consistent. So anyone who goes to the loan workbench is going to get the same data. So we've got our single source of truth, and we're really starting to drive that home. So again, as I mentioned, and I apologize for going quickly here, I just want to make sure I kind of try to get to some of the good stuff that we have coming up. I mentioned that we use those workbenches for that lens into the data. In general, though, we had some reporting gaps. It was taking a really long time for our business users to reproduce some of the reports that they've always done. So what we decided to do was to gather those requirements, and we did kind of a bottoms-up analysis, and we were looking for quick wins. So we wanted to say, who's using this data, exporting it and reformatting it or entering it into a different, how can we help with that? Because that just takes a lot of time. Even though we feel good about the data and the users feel good about the data, that's great. That's a big step. But we also want to help here. We want to make things more efficient. That's obviously part of the reason that you hire a data consulting firm, that you leverage tools like Tableau. So what we did is we went to the different departments and we said, those reports that you create on a weekly, monthly, daily basis, which ones are taking you the most time to do? This is an example right here of a consumer loan loss report that was being manually created based on the data that was being exported from the data warehouse or via Tableau in that workbench. So what we were able to do was say, okay, give me those requirements. And because the fields that the data that you're using to manually populate that spreadsheet, it's coming from the loan workbench. We know what those fields are. We've already done the mapping. let me create that report for you. And they were adamant that the report needs to look exactly the way it looked before, which was fine. So as you look at this report, I don't think this screams the most visually pleasing Tableau report you've ever seen, Tableau dashboard you've ever seen. However, this went a very long way for gaining trust from the different business areas. That, okay, the data warehouse does have this information. Oh, look, this team can start to create things that are really going to save me time moving forward. So this is an example of one of those reports. The one that I just am showing now, it's titled Loan Database. You'll see this has a completely different look and feel. It's got a logo up on the left-hand corner. The other one had no logo. Not only does it have detail down here in the section, which you can scroll through, and it shows the different types of loans based on their group code. You can put in different types of filterings with checkboxes, not with filters and slicers as before. And we also decided to kind of jump into the, hey, let's put something out there graphically, or put a picture out there that might be a little bit more visually pleasing. And this might say, okay, wow, most of our loans are indirect used auto. And you can go ahead again here and filter and change these. So this report as well was very well received, in the beginning. Looks very different. Doesn't have any, we're not working with standards here, but we are doing our best right now to start churning these reports out because we want to help as many departments as we can. We also want to get as many departments as we can using our single source of truth, or leveraging the data warehouse via Tableau. So throughout all this process, as we're in step 2, we're adding Tableau licenses, and we're educating some of our business users, leaders and supervisors to learn how to go in and get their data as we gather their requirements to help them with reports. Once we started to get some pretty significant adoption and people are asking for more and more, we said, okay, is this scalable? I don't know if this is scalable. We've got, every time we build a new dashboard, we're kind of creating a new Tableau TDE and we're pulling in those data elements, but are we doing anything to them? Are we incorporating business logic in those TDEs? Are we translating? And we said, hang on a second. It's time for us to move from let's just meet these immediate needs and let's get things done, to, okay, let's make sure this is scalable and let's make sure this is adhering to a specific type of data governance. Let's implement some standards. So Architecture, with their extensive experience, and this is, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Architecture, the firm from Maine. Jamie Jackson, who's the CEO, coined the phrase, we're going to take you guys from the Wild West to architecting to scale. So instead of creating multiple different master views, or multiple different views, I should say, to populate individual extracts, individual reports, individual dashboards, we actually looked and we said, okay, we really have 3 major data sources that fuel most of what turns into a dashboard, a report, or an extract. So let's really, really centralize our business logic with those data sources, and let's build what we call a conformance layer. So within that conformance layer, that's the secret sauce. That's what holds all of the translated logic, all the business rules, all of the definitions that then point to this dashboard, this report, that report. And that's what will ensure the most efficient way to make sure that one report represents the same concepts and actually the same data elements that another report claiming to do so. This is how we can ensure that single source of truth. And it also means that when we have to do our regression, if we had to add a data element, if we have to update a source system with a new release that introduces new data elements, we do that at the source, we do that at the conformance layer, and then we're able to see how that flows through to the subsequent dashboards and reports. So this is another kind of picture or an example of how we kind of move towards that conformed data source and how that feeds into all of our different outputs. So on the left-hand side, you can say we've got databases, call that your Epicus core, your Fiserv, whichever platform you are on. We've got APIs to different subsequent systems, our mortgage origination system. We've got Meridian Link for that actually is not an API, but one of our other source systems. We can bring flat files in, and we do that into the data warehouse. Mainframe, other sources, regardless of the source, we bring that data in its raw format, and that goes into the data warehouse. We then build this conformed data source, and I can't tell you how many months of effort went into validating and really, really making sure that the data definitions that resulted from this conformed data source were exactly what the business wanted and needed, and making sure that they understood what they have. And this conformed data source, again, is what feeds almost 100% of the output that comes from our data warehouse. And that may be extracts that go to external vendors, reports that show up in somebody's inbox, a simple query, or one of many of our Tableau dashboards that are in existence. So what we decided to do was move forward. Let's get a little bit more standardized. We implemented some color palettes, and we also decided to try to find some big wins. So many of you from credit unions on the phone, likely at your credit union, you may offer car loans. The car loans, indirect car loans, are a big part of our business. What you're looking at right here is a dealer report card that was developed a few years ago. And what this shows right now, it's rolled up to all dealers, but you can update this and select the data as of a certain date or just as of the most current date. And this is by the year. And if you pick a specific dealer, this information will roll up to be pertinent just for that one particular dealer. So maybe we want to know, for the dealer up the street, are we always giving them loans with a really low credit score? Are we always giving them loans that end up becoming delinquent? Are we always giving them loans that ultimately, wow, we've got to charge those off? So we can do this dealer by dealer or a roll up of all dealers. And what we found was the folks on our consumer lending team, if they were going to meet with a dealer, they could just bring their laptop with them and show this. They could save this as a PDF, they could print it, and they kind of have that one-stop shop at a glance dealer report card, which was, again, very, very well received. This is another example of a dashboard that we built, and this is the one that shows this is our most current standard in terms of color palette, boxes, and abilities to filters and drop down. So this is our deposit ops dashboard. Again, this shows at a glance how many shares do we have open on the books. You can see it says open, and what is the breakdown of those shares. You can select, those of you obviously who are familiar with Tableau know that you can drill into any of these. You can select a subset of these to really isolate the balance original amount, or even have a dividend rate for a particular deposit type. So very well received. We rolled this out several years ago, and the deposit ops is still pretty dependent on it. So moving forward, I want to jump in now to step 3, and this is where we really want to make that strategic shift. So if you remember before, when we were going out to those business units, we did that bottoms-up approach and said, how can we help you? What do we need? We decided to shift a little bit and do more of a top-down approach. Okay, let's really work to put dashboards in place that are going to help you run your business, that are going to help you make decisions about your department or even about the organization as a whole. And at the same time, we're going to look to replace as much manual effort as we can, because as I'm sure all of you know are experiencing the same thing, time's at a premium. We really want to look to ways that we can buy ourselves some more time to make those decisions or to invest elsewhere in other programs. We're ready to kind of kick it in gear here and gain some traction. What we did is we jumped right in and we said, all right, let's meet with retail. We know that they have goals. Every branch has a goal. Every individual sales and service rep has a goal. And our whole St. Mary's Bank retail organization has a goal, as I'm sure many of you can relate to. The way we tracked our actuals to goals was via a spreadsheet. So we have a spreadsheet for each branch, and then populated in here on each of those spreadsheets is the goal information for all of the different types of loans, all of the different types of shares, all the different types of CDs, goals by unit and by dollar amounts. And then at the end of the month, after the month has been completed, we had a resource who spent 10 to 20 hours a week to go to multiple source systems and get data and manually plug in the actuals for what happened the prior month for each of those different branches. And then this spreadsheet would get emailed out to the branch supervisors and the branch managers, and they would be able to work with their branch or work with their individual sales and service reps and say, okay, we didn't meet this goal, so maybe we'll shift gears and try something else. Or, wow, we really blew this goal out of the water, so let's focus on this one now. I think that's going to work. Long story short, all of that information that individual is taking from multiple source systems is in our data warehouse. The relevant pieces of information that individual was taking for those spreadsheets made it into the conformance layer. We then built what's called the branch status dashboard, so to speak. And what this represents, and I have this filtered here on one branch, and we have multiple different views of this particular spreadsheet. But what this shows is for the McGregor Street branch, as of, and this was pulled on August 26th, is when I took this screenshot. Where are we in terms of our month-to-date goals, our quarter-to-date goals, and our year-to-date goals for the amount of, the dollar amount of the share accounts that we need to open, the dollar amount of the CDs that we need to open for our goals. And it shows me how far along we are in each of those according to goals. So right away, I look at this and I say, wow, McGregor does not have to worry about opening share accounts. we went way over on that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Where do we need to focus? And mid-month, at the beginning of the month, towards the end of the month, I can focus my sales staff based on this at-a-glance information as opposed to having to wait until after the end of the month for it to close out. So you can see it also shows top performances. One of the things we found with this dashboard is it invoked extremely healthy competition among the sales reps and among the different branches. And we saw boosts of improvement, not just from a performance perspective in terms of meeting goals, but from a morale perspective as well. It was a great rollout. Specifically, something we could not get from a spreadsheet is our SSR report card. And that's what you're looking at here. And this shows for this individual SSR who happens to come from our Londonderry branch as of this year. So these are the cumulative actuals for this particular year. So you can get an idea for the type of shares, the dollar amount of the shares that this individual is originating at her branch. This was very well received. One thing I do want to point out that was extremely important, and the reason that this was well received was the collaboration between the business and the folks who were actually sourcing this data and building these dashboards. The validation effort was unbelievable. There was buy-in all around. We built this exactly to spec, and that resulted in the benefits. And I know I'm getting close on time here, so I'm going to just very quickly highlight some of these. This is a member branch analysis, and this is when we really tried to, all right, we're getting strategic here. Let's jump into this a little bit more. What this shows at a glance is where are members opening their accounts? Are they doing it online? Are they doing it when they get a car? Are they doing it in the branches? And then where are they transacting? And this provides some insight. And well, you can see here, most of the transactions are online transactions. You can see that most of our folks, if they don't transact online, they transact at our primary branch. But what this dashboard allows us to do is really drill into any of these. So what this shows me here is if I click on these 365 McGregor Street branch transactions. So they are individual transactions, which we are able to get because of our data warehouse, and we're able to identify those and define those in the data warehouse. Of these 365, how are these 365 McGregor Street transactions? A member is physically walking into that branch to do these things. Well, what jumps out at me is the first thing that they're doing is depositing a check. So if I were to click on this and look at these 129,000 transactions, I could then identify those members, and I could look at how many of them have a online banking flag, how many have a mobile banking flag. If they don't have mobile banking, there's a marketing opportunity because they can do this check deposit from their home via their phone as opposed to having to walk into a branch. So if that's our desire to drive a lower cost, lower overhead channel, that's something that we can gain some insights from here. Okay, again, in the interest of time, I'm going to go through pretty quickly. A couple things we did this year that I think are worth mentioning. We talked about that data quality dashboard that allowed us to identify those data errors, so we had a clean conversion. We formalized that program just this year, and we actually now, since I've done these slides, we have about 65 rules in production, and we have a process by which each of the different departments are actively working these to correct these data errors as soon as possible at the source, as opposed to waiting for implications downstream. So we actually gathered a lot of these requirements by meeting with accounting, because once accounting finds errors, it's got to go all the way back to deposit operations or to loan servicing or to loan operations to fix it at the source. But if accounting tells us about those annoying errors that they find, we find them and we catch them and we fix them even before they get to accounting. So we were really working on some streamlining and some efficiencies with our data quality program. We really drove home that single source of truth. We've got a strict data governance process. We've got a very carefully documented data dictionary with business speak definitions so people like me can understand them as well. We stole a term from Tableau, which is Tableau office hours. Ours, I guarantee, is very different than real Tableau office hours. But what these are our training sessions, and these are opportunities that we do every 2 weeks to show the business community new things that we've done to gather requirements from them, get their feedback, encourage adoption and ownership, and also to show them how to do certain things like, hey, do you know that you could set up a subscription in Tableau? Do you know that you can have that dashboard sent to you to forward to your team? That has been very well received, and we continue to do that. And then finally, architecture, who's been with us the whole way, who's been really helping us move this forward by doing our development, being our data vendor. we deployed a full set of architecture workbench. We talked about the loan one a little bit. We now have a loan, a deposit, a card, a member, and a transaction workbench. And what that means is just like that visibility you could get into the loans on our books, we can do the same thing with our cards. We just recently pulled credit cards in-house. We were using TSYS previously. Now that all of that data is ours, it's all in the data warehouse, we can put as many different slicers that we want in here to really dig into who has credit cards, how are those credit cards being used, and what's the distribution based on date, based on age, based on any other type of filter or slicer that you want to put in place. And finally, what I think is the most beneficial is our transaction workbench, because this was extremely difficult to really break down and to really validate and make essentially usable for the business leaders. But this transaction workbench allows you to get as granular as you want to understand who's doing what, where, when, how old are they not, what type of transactions are they doing. This goes down into exhaustive detail all the way. We're not quite able to say where the transaction took place. So, example, if you use your debit card at Target or at Dunkin' Donuts, we have that data. We just haven't published that into this workbench that's coming. But we really have all of that information here, which will allow our marketing department, for example, to do targeted campaigns. And finally, when we talk about what's next, what I'm really looking forward to doing in 2019 is really building out a marketing data strategy. So I'm going to work very closely with our director of marketing, and we're going to figure out how to leverage this data that we have available and the more data that we're going to have available in order to kind of further the strategy that they have in place and that they want to put in place for 2019. Part of that, we've already been working with architecture on building a member retention model based on that input and direction from marketing. And then finally, I do want to put this out there. There's an asterisk next to there, and I just noticed that you actually can't see my description of that asterisk. I don't know if that's good or not, but we are considering right now as our next step migrating to architecture's cloud-based platform for this solution. So they've done a lot of great work with us. We've had a lot of successes, particularly in 2018. So we're really, really looking forward to these next steps. So I realize I went very fast, and I do apologize if I hope I didn't step on anybody else's time. And I do hopefully left at least a few minutes for some questions if there are any at this time.
Oh, definitely. Thank you, Melissa. That has me just whirring with ideas for my own BI inside. We do have some questions, and please, if you have questions you haven't put in, feel free to do so now. One of them that we got that I found myself asking too was, did you guys build all of the various dashboards, the Tableau dashboards that we've been seeing here? Did you build them in-house, or did architecture help come up with not even the look and feel, but just the behind-the-scenes parts?
Both. At the very beginning, architecture did everything, and then we were able to leverage our business analysts, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. The ability to very quickly come up to speed on Tableau if you have a data background. So it is a mixture. Some of the more interactive, like for example, that branch manager dashboard, definitely architecture. The data quality dashboards, they actually brought with them proprietary to them. Those are their dashboards. But we do have resources now. The head of our business analytics department now is building out her own set of dashboards based on this data for change control processes and whatnot. So it is blended, very heavy architecture, just because very cost advantageous for us to use those resources at cost, as opposed to trying to find somebody to hire in-house that can churn them out that quickly, as I'm sure you have experienced. Yeah,
definitely. Out of curiosity, how big is your data analysis, analytics, whatever it's called internally, department? How many folks you got?
We're small. We have one full-time internal resource with a open rec for 1.5, and we have a kind of a blended, maybe about 2.5 FTEs in all total, not representing 2.5 individuals from architecture.
Wow, that is lean, but I think we can see how effective. Very impressive. Okay, a couple other questions we have here. How frequently, and it probably differs based on the dashboard, but what's your refresh schedule like? How often is that all getting pulled through?
Nightly. Unless there's an immediate need and we can do it on the fly. One of the reasons we're looking forward to going to the cloud is we'll have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the performance of those refreshes. So but we do a full nightly refresh, both of our data warehouse, with the exception of our mortgage data that comes in twice a day, and a refresh of all of the Tableau sourced information nightly as well. So by the time when you come in the morning, unless there's an issue, and if there is, we resolve it before you get in the morning, the data in every single one of our Tableau dashboards is as of close of business the prior day.
Oh, that's wonderful. And are you refreshing just by a Tableau server?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Couple other questions here. Someone was asking if you're using your Tableau extracts as your conformance layer, and what was the process to choose to embed the logic within the reporting layer rather than in the underlying data layer in the data mart, for example?
The conformance layer is in the underlying data layer, which then pushes to the TDEs. And that architecture, no pun intended, is what architecture brought with them. So they did explore a few other things just based on due diligence. But the process by which they take the raw data, build the conformance layer, and then push that data as needed to the different TDEs that populate the dashboard was their decision.
Okay, wonderful. Someone else wanted to know, how are you handling requests? So service requests that come in through Tableau when a particular business user is asking for something, especially regarding data blending, their own things versus warehouse data.
Right, and we have, I will say, we have very little requests for data blending. And if they do have that request, we do that for them via the data warehouse into the conformance layer and a custom dashboard or extract. Because our users are able to get at all of the different data sources, and we already have most of those pieces conformed, we get very few of those requests. However, we get multiple data requests every day. Like, hey, how many people have done this, this, and this? Hey, can you show me, I need a report that shows X, Y, and Z. We have a data request process, and then we have a prioritization process that I lead and we review. And one of the things that we've been doing for the past year is every single request that comes in, we make sure we can meet that immediate need for that particular business user. And then we do the analysis to say, okay, is this a one-time thing truly? Right, we'll write the query, we'll save it in case it happens to come up later. What's the best way to fulfill this particular request? Can you use the workbench to do it? We want to teach the business user, the business leader, the business area representative to self-help with Tableau. So is this something you could have gotten on your own? If so, let me show you how to do that. If not, let me build you a new dashboard, or let me generate a new extract that you can then FTP to a vendor. So with every request that comes in, I mean, some of them are, hey, can you add this field to my dashboard? Some of them, I just need a quick query written. Can you tell me the answer to this question? But many of them, we really do spend time making sure that what we're delivering is scalable. So we're really working to kind of build as much of that in as possible when they come in.
Absolutely. And I take it that we did have one question on what exactly was meant by data sources by business unit. And I think that's probably fleshes that out a little bit, and that there are different needs based on the data they're actually looking for. And that's also done.
Correct. And we have, for example, we have a different source system for mortgage originations, a different source system for account openings, a different source system for loan servicing, a different source system. We have our core. So, our loan folks are always looking in loan servicing, but we might want to overlay that with different member data or different associated transaction data. And that's where that conformance layer comes in.
Okay, great. I'll try and fit in. Thank you. People are definitely coming through the questions. I just don't want to squeeze our folks from workers too much. Just a couple more here. And this is one that actually comes up quite a bit, is how beforehand did you calculate the ROI on switching to Tableau, implementing Tableau, and then were you able to feel like you were able to quantify the ROI after you implemented?
We did. And I will say that we and I were very, very fortunate at the time that we did not have to do that in advance. We were given a great proposal by architecture, and we said, you know what, let's give this a shot. We were also in that post-conversion phase where people were desperate. So if I said, hey, I need 10 more licenses in order to be able to report on our delinquencies, they were like, heck yeah, go buy those licenses, get this done. So we were a little bit fortunate and unfortunate, however you look at it in that way. However, after the dust settled, we got everybody acclimated, everyone was comfortable, we're humming along, we did go back and do some ROI, and it was mostly manpower, but the amount of automation and efficiency gains that we were able to get from the dashboards and the reports, and specifically kind of that requirements gathering and that really more of that bottoms up versus top down approach, we were able to actually document that and justify it. And actually architecture wrote a case study in which they did that specifically for some of our collections reports as well as for the branch manager dashboard. But there are numerous examples of ROI.
Wonderful. Okay, we do have a few more, and I promise we will be following up with questions. We've got some good ones, including how you work with external partners like indirect auto data and data governance. But we will follow up both in the forum and then through our emails. If you are interested in making sure, we've had some issues, by the way, with just getting emails through some of the firewalls at credit unions. If you'd like to, the link is going to be in this presentation to sign up for the email list, which helps with whitelisting. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Make sure you don't miss any updates like the slide deck and the presentation link. Thank you so much, Melissa. This was hugely valuable. And we'll definitely circulate the rest of these questions to y'all. In the meantime, I think thank you again, and let's get over to the Cassandra and Aaron from Workers Credit Union.
Thank you, Charlotte. So we're so happy to be here today with everyone. And I promise I'll be fast. I want to get you into Tableau as soon as possible. But I want to start off with a quick look at how it works at Workers, and that is definitely pun intended. So we are a state chartered credit union. Our headquarters is in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and we currently have 16 branches spread across north central Massachusetts. We're kind of neighbors with St. Mary's Credit Union in a fun way, so that's great. As of the end of October, we were close to $1.8 billion in assets with a little over 102,000 members. Our core system is Oracle through COCC. Our team, I thought was small, but I think Melissa's is a little bit smaller. So I am the AVP of Enterprise Analytics, and I have 2 business analysts. I have a financial business analyst who is here with me today, and I have an enterprise business analyst. We also have an enterprise data architect. As far as reporting structure goes, I report directly to the CFO. So most of our team is under the finance umbrella. However, the data architect reports up through the CIO, so he is under IT. We warehouse with Microsoft SQL, and our data viz solution is Tableau. We love it. So let's get you over here. So as far as Tableau data strategy went, Tableau is so attractive in and of itself, and it trumped by far anything we had in-house in terms of functionality. I really wasn't concerned about people loving Tableau and wanting to use it. We spent more time focusing on what type of use cases we were going to tackle first. So essentially we did this by conducting a round of C-suite analytic interviews. So we talked to them about things such as what reports you're using today to drive your decision making, what data don't you have today that can add value for you in the future. It actually went really well. They had so much for us to start with. And probably the biggest benefit we hope to achieve by doing this, top down, is to be able to align future use cases as we work down the chain of command. So, here's a few more reasons as to why it's important, but I really want to get you guys a Tableau. So let's jump to the bottom, and we like funding, right? So data can be really expensive sometimes, and we find that if you hook the C-suite first, you have a really good chance of getting funding later on. And is it working for us? So far, so good. So once we get a solid use case list, next, of course, comes the data. So we can nerd out with the best of them, talking about third-party data and AI. But for us, the beginning was really focusing on our core data. That really had to be priority for us. Number one, we had it. And it really does take into consideration where we are today. Something we always focus on at Workers is we have to first understand what we look like today before we can work towards a better tomorrow. So for us, that really looked like us gathering things like financial data, member data, and account data along with transactions first. Year to date, we have a good chunk of visualizations that I would say are very important to us in laying that foundational work. Some of the things include staffing tolerance levels, branch placement strategy, lending activity, deposit trends, member analytics, transaction trends and tendencies. But the two we really are excited to show you today would be our financial review, which really adds transparency in financial performance. And the second is our key ratio guide, which is really math without the sting. Just because you work for a financial institution doesn't mean that you're gung-ho about math, and we really think our ratios here are important. So we wanted to find a way to make it not as hard to look at. So I'm actually going to pass you over to Aaron Locke. He is our financial business analyst, and he's going to walk you through our two financial dashboards.
And I'm also going to drop the computer just to get you guys started off. So I'm going to be hopping around a little bit, so bear with me. But just kind of building off of what Cassandra was saying, we really are at kind of the beginning stages of our analytical journey. Just watching some of what St. Mary's was doing with a lot of their core conversion, putting it all into one place, that's where we want to get to. So we're at the kind of the beginning stages. And so we really are putting emphasis with our beginning dashboards on creating a picture of what we look like now, just like she was saying, but keeping things simple, digestible, easy to understand, and then slowly rolling out higher functionality, because we're giving this to a lot of department managers and people within the departments that aren't used to this kind of software. They're used to kind of what they have before. So we want to keep things kind of consistent, and then slowly roll out higher functionality that they can kind of get used to. So I'm going to hop over to kind of the highest level, which is our key ratios. And this is really a 1,000-mile flyby of kind of what's going on in the credit union. This is how we grade ourselves against our own plan, our budget, and ultimately how we grade ourselves against our peer group, which we rely heavily on Callahan data to kind of, aggregate and create the peer groups, and then we determine where we're falling based on kind of our strategic direction. So within this kind of top level view, it's a very simple dashboard. And that's one of our main themes with our, this baseline. It's keeping it as simple as possible. We have very simple date selection, filterable prior period. I can look at prior quarter, prior year. And it's very simple. It gives me the ratios. It gives me my actual value. It gives me whatever the prior period I've selected. It shows me just a quick variance that you can, use Tableau functionality to highlight, what you want to focus on, and then target. So ultimately, because this is in the process dashboard, ultimately what we want to get to is to be able to swap, this plan, which is going off of our budget data, to swap to a peer ratio and, be able to change what threshold we're looking for. But the whole goal of this is to create transparency within our kind of financial system and the data underneath, kind of drifting away from feeding people reports that are in like a PDF or whatever, to giving them the reins to then kind of actually be able to self-explore the data, the immense data set that we have, that any credit union has, really. The additional functionality within this is in the tooltip, you'll see like how the formula was come to, or how the ratio is calculated, really just with the intention of being able to show what's going on in our key ratios. So I'll just click on one, like our operating expense ratio. One of the biggest pain points for our credit union has been the budgeting process, looking at what's going on in the financials, which not a lot of department managers know or are comfortable with. And it's been a real pain. So this is one of the ratios that really highlights the end result, is we want to, keep our operating expense ratio down, by improving the budget ratio or the budget process. So the only other view in the key ratio kind of dashboard is just being able to drill through And it's really educational more than anything. There's not a lot of really advanced analytics going on. It's just this idea of a baseline. We have the pieces of whatever ratio that you've clicked on. So I'm looking at my average assets. It gives me a very simple timeline, along with like a change over month over month, with a line as kind of like this dual axis. Our non-interest expense, which is the cost we're trying to control. And this provides a kind of a jumping off point to dive deeper into the financial data. So, I mean, kind of our old budgeting process was pretty nasty, and a lot of smaller credit unions might be able to relate with us. It was dependent on us giving all of our department managers a really nasty looking income statement, depending on where they were. This one's marketing, out of Oracle, which is our GL, our financial reporting software, where they would look at this as far as their actual performance with different variance columns. They would then get another income statement, which is a different format from our budgeting software, that a lot of them would print out and highlight things manually based on areas they wanted to focus. And when they finally narrowed down where they were off and what areas they needed to focus on, they were able to put in a request with us or whoever was reporting for a transaction history list. So they were able to look through and figure out what was going on in that individual GL. So our goal at this baseline on the financial side was taking our GL data on the most granular level and throwing it all in to this kind of financial review process. So you saw the key ratios, and I'll very quickly go through kind of what it looks like in a financial statement. So we wanted to take like a two-pass approach to the financial review. So the first pass was this idea of recreating what was familiar, really this traditional financial statement view, but with advanced, Tableau filter, drill down, and, more advanced functionality that you don't get with a piece of paper or a PDF, which is how we've been reporting to the board for as long as we can remember. So there's a reason for these initial or for this format of a financial statement. And there's a reason we still see it today. Sometimes the best way to display this information is in a tabular format. So, but we're talking about the budgeting process. So I'm going to hop over to the income statement. And you see kind of very similar to the key ratios dashboard is these same time filters. I can swap what budget we're looking at because we reforecast about 4 times throughout the year. Prior period. I can swap to a different group if I want to look at my lending centers. So we're looking at very basic Tableau functionality in an attempt to make this easy to look at and just create transparency, because there's a lot of stuff that was happening underneath that department managers really just didn't see. It was not easier for them to see because of all the different sources they were getting places from. So it's very simple. This was our first pass at kind of the financial review. And where we want to go is more towards a visual consumption, more how normal people, not just finance people, digest all this kind of data. So that means graphical, visual. And again, trying to keep it as simple as we can. So this is kind of a high-level overview that can help, figure out where, what area we want to focus on, variance to budget based on year-to-date data. I can click in. If I want to look at, area department, this is showing me, what departments are making or driving up our costs. Like if I want to just look at the departments that are driving it here, I can see quickly, what my actuals are with the colored bars, the lines, the dotted lines, at just a quick visual cue to see what's going on underneath. But the real value that we've seen as far as department managers using this now, because now we're starting to implement this into our quarterly review process for all of our departments, is looking into this. A department manager can bring up this dashboard, which is really just recreating exactly what the same data that's in a traditional income statement, and it's just representing it in a visual way. So if I want to look at, say, I'm marketing, it's going to drown out all the data that doesn't matter to me. Obviously, I don't have interest income, interest expense, or really any income. I'm a cost center. I can take a peek, click through, very quick visualizations, but the real value that comes out of this is the ability to drill into the transaction level, because that's what we wanted to get to. The ability to completely recreate the budget process in one place. So it looks messy now, but it's really built with the idea of clicking on, things within the view to filter it down. So if I want to look at travel and education, it's going to filter down to the individual GLs that are in that category in kind of the hierarchy that we have set up. And then I can click on like a meeting and convention or employee travel. And it'll show me my budget variance, where I was last year. And I can go down to the actual list of transactions. So you guys can see exactly what we're spending in marketing for travel. But I'm using some of Tableau's really cool features, like a wildcard match. Like say, I don't know, if I'm looking at just in marketing, I go to like contributions. And we do a lot with the city of Lunenburg, which is close by. So if I just want to look for just the transactions that are tagged for Lunenburg, those will show up. So this really just creates a platform for a department manager to self-explore what's going on inside their own data. They can see where they're off with their budget, what's going on for prior period, and they can really just dive in and explore themselves. And the whole first phase of this, because this is pretty new for us as far as rolling it out, is going to be cleanup. They're going to see things that they weren't able to see before, GLs that are getting billed to the wrong GL. But we're excited to be able to clean up and start to improve our process and what it looks like on the data side. And that's, that pretty much brings us back, down to the bottom level of our financial review.
Yeah, so that's, we hope you guys like this. What we wanted to show you this specifically because, you always hear about people wanting to analyze what your members are doing, your transactions, anything really dependent on your members. But very rarely do you hear people get all sorts of excited about analyzing finances. So we wanted to show you guys what we were doing with it. We've had really great success with these dashboards. We are getting people to buy into a financial process that we have struggled with for a pretty long time. And they're excited about it. How wild is that? So we hope that we showed you a little bit today, that maybe you guys can take back with you. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the TNT portion of the Callahan Tug event sometime soon. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Please do feel free, everybody, pop your questions in. So far, we don't have a specific question, but someone did say beautiful tool tips, and I can only agree. Very nice. I really enjoy seeing these. This is a very cool set of dashboards.
Awesome.
Since we're waiting on any particular questions, I did just want to echo what they said. We want to dedicate this sort of 10-minute period or more to, if you don't feel like you want to do a full presentation to your peers in this group, but you have something fun to share, or even that you say, okay, does anybody have ideas for how to make this better? That's the kind of thing we want to be able to use this group for in part two. So feel free to reach out. The contact info is on the various websites, as well as it'll be in this deck, which we'll send out. Okay, we do have a question for you guys. Asking, what was the most difficult part of getting CIO, CFO buy-in to get them on board with things?
Hardest part?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, they were so great about it. The hardest part was finding time in their calendar. Honestly, the hardest part. They were so on board. I don't think it's been a secret. And Workers Credit Union's 104 years old. We've had.
Are we muted?
Oh, can you hear? You guys can hear us, right?
Yeah, you just unshared.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm glad you can hear us. We have a lot of data. We went through a core conversion as well in 2014. But what we didn't do was clean our data from our old system to our new one. So, we have all been through so much stress in terms of reporting and data that the minute they were like, oh, you want to help us? They were like, absolutely. And you know what's awesome is about a week or two after we rolled out the financial review dashboard. You know, Tableau, you can track who's using what and how often. Our CEO was top on all the charts, so it was just really great to see someone like that, really using the tool and getting their feedback too. It was awesome. I really couldn't say anything bad about it, to be honest with you.
That is wonderful. And it's one of the trickiest parts for this. One other question for you guys, whether you use any paper-based sources as data for these dashboards, and if not, was there an actual paper transition?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question, Charlotte?
Paper-based sources?
Yeah.
Paper-based, well, you mean so we took a process that was, all paper and turned it into Tableau.
Paper and Excel spreadsheets.
That's what
right.
you mean. We tried to do that. So any process that takes, more than 2 pieces of paper to do anything should be good as gone in our eyes. And that was just awful.
Yeah, and we moved to pulling all of our GL data at the transaction level out of core, and we worked with our data architect to put it in kind of our it's almost like a separate personal Microsoft SQL database environment that he's kind of created for us. That kind of protects us from errors going into core, and as we pull data out, we're able to clean it and do some cool stuff with it. Make sure that's our way of creating a conformance layer at the moment until we get more involved in that data governance process.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, guys. Oh, we may have one more question. Yes. The clarification was that is all the data available in the database, or are you regularly scanning paper, such as receipts?
No scanning.
Yes, no scanning.
Good. Good for everyone. I think many of us remember what it was like to submit expense reports before all these wonderful technology solutions, and that was an effort. Well, thank you so much, you guys. And for everyone on the phone, we will be sending out the questions that we had from before and trying to engage in conversation there. But thank you so much to Aaron and Cassandra. This was really useful. It's really fun to sort of get to actually peek inside and see both how you did it and what was the actual outcome, and then how you click around even. I know that getting hands-on is something we can't always do with other people's tools. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And if you do have questions for them that you didn't think of right now, their contact info is in the slide deck that we will be circulating. So thank you. Well, just to close out, thank you everybody for attending. I know we're running a little over. I'm working on improving that, but I love hearing all the questions. Couple of quick updates to stay tuned for. We will be having our next meeting in January. The holidays are a bit crazy, so we're going to go ahead and punt to January so we can have a really good get together and keep the quality content moving. Other things to think about. One of the common things we were hearing and why we wanted to get this group together was that although you might be able to go to your local tugs, and if you don't know about them, they almost always exist in the bigger places. There's a Washington, D.C. tug, but for me, if I go there, oftentimes the people are all talking education or all talking government. If there's a way we can say, okay, are you going to the Boston tug? You're going to the Boston tug too? Let's get together and talk credit unions there, so you can actually feel like maybe we're getting a little bit of different value out, and see how we can potentially help you facilitate that. And then lastly, just get your share on in the community. We'll be answering and reaching out with more of the questions from today, as well as just continuing to share content, and as well as interesting links, great trainings, and various things that are going on in the world data analytics, both specific to credit unions and in ways that could be helpful to you. So very much encourage you to get there. And then if you're just interested in, and it's a wonderful thing, in joining our webinars, one of the best ways to make sure you get updated on that would be to pop in and use this survey link, which has a little R in there in the middle. Otherwise, it would be super simple, to sign up for the mailing list. We want to make sure that we can get you your updates. And that is about it. If you are interested in speaking and sharing what you've been doing, please reach out to me. Likewise, if you want to host, interested in helping plan, but not necessarily wanting to be in front of the microphone, we are here for everybody. And the more good voices and ideas and things we can do with this group and help foster useful member value added resources and conversations for credit unions, the better. So thank you everybody for attending, and stay tuned for our follow-ups. Again, encourage you to get to the community, get to our mailing list, and thank you to all the presenters today, Cassandra, Melissa, Aaron. This was really wonderful. And thank you to Jordan Scott over at Tableau for helping all of our logistics. So thank you all, and stay tuned for the follow-ups with the recording and the slide deck. And have a wonderful rest of the day, and happy holidays.